Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready for that battle against the Baltimore Ravens, 1 o'clock Sunday, actually Cleveland Browns Stadium. Roquan Smith, linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, talked about coming into Cleveland to face the Browns.
You go in there as the enemy to go take over, and that's our plan, to actually go take over. I think they call it the dog pound. I consider myself a dog, so I'm right at home in that place. So I'm excited to get back in there, and I know they're a physical football team, but so are we. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the most physical football team that comes out of there, and whoever is the most physical football team in that game, that's going to come out victorious. And at the end of the day, you're considered the bad guy because you're going into essentially another man's house, and you're trying to take over, like his wife, kids, everyone there, to watch them. So we going over to beat their tails in front of their wife and kids. So when you think about it from that perspective, like any man's gonna, fight to the death from that point. I know if that's me in that case, I know I would. So I think about it from that standpoint, and I'm just going in, just like I prepare for any other game. Play to the whistle, play physical, and hit anything that moves.
So welcome in Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, you could have just said it's a tough place to play and we're going to go in and play hard, but that's getting some people riled up.
Yeah, I've never heard somebody put their foot in the mouth by just saying, hey, road games are tough in the NFL. Like, that's basically all he was trying to say. But he went such a roundabout way to get there, in such a weird path to get there, that it turned into a whole giant quote. And it's like, why would you do that? Especially, you expect linebackers to have better decision-making ability than that.
Yeah, but you know what? Okay, now nobody's overlooking this one, so that's on the table. This is really interesting as well. We'll have a couple of clips from him. Michael Lombardi, former front office executive with the Browns and a couple other teams, talking about the matchup with Lamar and the Ravens offense. This is from the Bill Simmons podcast.
Lamar will be the first real test, but
right.
I'm looking at that game and I'm going, well, Baltimore's as banged up on their offensive line as anybody, and they have the speed to stay with Lamar, especially if he tries to move around the pocket. Like, to me, this feels like a terrible matchup for Baltimore. You agree?
I agree completely, especially if Lindstrom and Stanley are still out. And, you got Schwartz is going to attack. The one thing Schwartz is always very good at doing is attacking the protection. So not only does he know how to get the matchups, he knows how to attack the protections on third down. Then it becomes a really complicated game, and he gets free runners. Yeah, this will be a hard one.
And now Stanley and Linderbaum are supposed to be back. Staley and Linderbaum, the two offensive linemen, have practiced. But it's not a great matchup for the Ravens. What do you think, Browns defense against Lamar Jackson?
It should be interesting because physically this team athletically is one teams that can match up well with them, especially with all the things that they like to do in the run game. We've seen that in past years with Greg Roman. I think another thing that's going to be worth noting here is that it's no longer Greg Roman, right? So the offense is not as complicated. It's not as hard to predict as it used to be with all that like pistol run formation. Basically, like, it's close to the triple options you can run in the NFL. They were running. And then you also look at the fact that we know what them Todd Monken protections used to look like in Cleveland, and they weren't the most protective protections, right? We used to just leave guys on islands, maybe a chip here or there, but it wasn't a lot. That was one of the big changes with Kevin Stefanski. We're like, wow, the offensive line is so much better than in 2019 because of our willingness to help with protections. Todd Monken does not have that same ideal. So is that going to be a problem for the Baltimore Ravens, right? Are they going to keep those extra guys in the box? Because that's something that Todd has not really done consistently throughout his career.
Well, so the question becomes, what does Jim Schwartz do defensively against Lamar Jackson, and how does his defense approach Jackson? Here's Schwartz on that topic from earlier today.
Speed, effort, those kind of things. We're going to go. I mean, I think you can err on the other side of Lamar Jackson. If you sit there and shoe the chickens, as we say, you're not going to get him either. So we're going to rely on our team speed. We're going to rely on team defense. We're going to rely on running through with leverage and, try to take the fight to him as opposed to sitting back and, trying to hem him in.
And again, Quincy, don't you expect, Jim Schwartz is going to play. They're going to play defense the way they play defense. It's not going to be altered.
Yeah, they're going to play their game until somebody tells them that they can't right now. That's what the level of defense that they're playing. They're going to keep 5 on the line of scrimmage at times. They're going to blitz out of that. They're going to do some wide 9 stuff. Look, this is going to be a favorable matchup for this Browns defense because I don't think Baltimore has guys who they feel like can win immediately off the line of scrimmage versus elite corners. Now, maybe Zay Flowers can do a little bit of that, but on a routine basis, on a replicatable basis, there's not much they can do.
Yeah, it's, again, that will be a challenge without question. Does the Browns defense have a weakness, do you think?
Not structurally. There's things you can do occasionally to beat them, right? You might be able to beat them deep because they play some man. You might be able to pick them, like Pittsburgh did a couple of times because they play a lot of man. But, if you look at structurally, if there's somebody who's a flaw in this defense, I really don't see it because, yes, they're aggressive, but they're aggressive within structure. So, not really. I don't think there's a giant gaping hole in this defense like the defensive tackle room was last year. When you look at this team and you try to game plan, you go, hey, I'm going to attack here, right? When you look at Pittsburgh, you say, hey, I'm going to attack those linebackers. I'm going to put them in coverage. I'm going to isolate them, and I'm going to take advantage of that if I can get the time to throw it. When you look at Baltimore, you can say the same thing. But when you look at Cleveland, you don't really want to do that because there's not a great chance of success there, and then you're holding the ball longer for a guy like Myles Garrett. So this is just, I don't want to say this is a defense with zero weaknesses, but this is a defense that structurally is built very, very, very sound.
When you, and again, I know you've addressed this on your show, the Browns culture, do you think it's changed?
I think how they bounced back from Monday night was a big change, right? And what we're used to with the Cleveland Browns, and how that a loss like that usually kind of derails the season. You start to hear all these different reports of guys blaming the coaches and how it's not their fault. And it turns into a mess after a game like that. But that wasn't the case. It was like that game happened, they threw it out, and then by Tuesday they were back ready to play some football. They were in high spirits all week leading up to that game, and then they played that game, played well. So that's a culture change, right? That's a team that has some confidence. That's a team that does not believe that one game defines them. That's a team that's not about to panic because something goes wrong. They feel like they're talented enough to correct course.
So Browns back on the practice field today. Deshaun Watson, we find out, did some light throwing, kind of resting his throwing shoulder. Everyone else on the 53-man roster, including Greg Newsome, good to go. You look over at the Ravens, and this is from one of the Ravens beat reporters, not practicing today. Odell Beckham with an ankle, Rashad Bateman with a hamstring, Marlon Humphrey with his foot, Adofe Owa with an ankle, David Ojabo with a knee. Returning to practice today, Justice Hill, who had a toe and a foot injury, Kyle Hamilton, a back injury. Also, Gus Williams, Ronnie Staley, Tyler Linderbaum returned yesterday. Quincy, the Ravens are just beat up. Every team gets its bumps and bruises, but they got a lot of guys that have missed games.
They do, but also I think that they're getting to the better part of it, right? Hump's the big name there that they want back. Maybe you could throw Odell Beckham in there, but I would lump Odell Beckham in with role players, right? And Ojabo and Owe, right? They're 2 starting edge rushers. That's not good to have them both not practicing by today. So that's an issue for them, but they have their offensive line back. And when I look at this matchup for them, they're going to blitz with multiple guys at the line of scrimmage anyways. I don't think that their edges being healthy really flips the pendulum either way, but that offensive line being more healthy, that's really important. I think Kyle Hamilton, he's quietly been their best defensive player all year, so I think that's also a big get for them. So yes, they have a ton of guys on their injury report and some names that we recognize, but also don't sleep on the names coming off those injury reports because those are some important get backs for them.
Yeah, without question. Kyle Hamilton, though, with a safety with a back issue, you just kind of, it's like, okay, But yeah, I'm with you. He's been fantastic. Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Now I can step aside. Take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Talk a little bit about Deshaun Watson. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, Dave. Longtime Browns fan who was born and raised in Cleveland. Love your show. I had some concern about the defense, whether they can hold up. I think they're going to be really great because they can run in a lot of really talented people. Now, I just hope the offense can hold up their part of the bargain. I know it's early in the season, but this is a very exciting year. Thanks very much. Go Browns. Roots.
So I always appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I think there's going to be ups and downs. The defense is playing really well, and I think they're going to be among the league's best. And I think the offense will get some chemistry and get some things going. Just your thoughts just on that.
Yeah, you just look, if this defense plays at this level and the offense plays at a high level, obviously it's a good thing. But what you want is for these two to meet in the middle at some point, right? For the offense to be really good and the defense to be really good. You don't want to have the defense maintain a historic pace because that's what's required for you to win football games. But I do think this offense will catch up. You saw some good signs, some like real tangible good signs from Deshaun Watson last week. Now, again, he didn't get pressured as much as he did the previous 2 weeks. So there's that caveat to be had. He'll definitely get pressured this week. So we'll see if there's an improvement there. But also I think with Deshaun, like this isn't going to be full on what the merge of what we want probably until November, but he should be able to be capable of these kind of games during that point, right? I'm not saying it's going to look like Monday Night Football until November, but I'm saying he's going to be about this level of play for a little while, and then he's probably going to make a little bit of a jump here. That's a reasonable timetable for him. And not just him, honestly, the offense, right? Like everybody has to adjust to each other. Everybody has to get used to each other. And I think, the offense is going to take a little bit longer, but that defense is so good that I think they can hold them on for as long as they need to get perfect,
Yeah, if the defense plays in the fashion, and they don't, to expect them to allow, an average of less than 8 or 9 first down, you can't expect that. If they play at a high level, it gives the offense time to get this sorted out. It's kind of interesting. So we heard from Michael Lombardi, Bill Simmons a little bit earlier. They talked about what they saw from Deshaun Watson against the Titans.
This doesn't look like the stereotypical, like, oh, we traded for this older QB. He's 34 now. He could still, he's conceivably physically in his prime. But that was the first time I felt like, oh, that kind of looked like Deshaun. Yeah. Right? Did you feel that way?
The first time. Oh, I thought completely. And he was confident. He was moving around. I thought he really was back. Now, I wrote about him this week. I think he misses Will Fuller. I think he needs a down the field guy that makes plays. Remember when he was good with Will Fuller?
Oh, yeah.
Will Fuller bailed him out a lot of times, and maybe Cooper can be that guy. But I think the pressure being on him, he has to throw the ball more effectively. Yeah. I mean, look, they didn't run the ball. You couldn't run the ball against the Titans. I mean, that was the one thing. People say, well, they don't have Chubb. How are they going to beat the Titans? Well, they weren't running the ball with Chubb anyway. The Titans are hard to run the ball on. You got to throw it on the Titans, and you got to prove that, and he did. So that's a huge step. And Baltimore, look, I mean, I know what Minshew had like 44. I mean, it was 1,000 paper cuts, but they were really good. They had 22 third downs in that game in Indianapolis. So they didn't really make an explosive play, but they made a lot. They got a lot of first down. They were in third down quite a bit, which tells you they were holding on to the ball.
And Quincy, that's Deshaun Watson looked pretty good. I was critical of him Monday night, said he needed to play better. He played a lot better.
Yeah, he came out there and it took him a little while to get 100% going, but they did the thing where they started him out slow, made sure he had a ton of completions. And then once he hit that deep ball to Jerome Ford, I think it calmed a lot of his nerves. Like, I think we forget. It had been a long time since we've seen Deshaun. Like, we had not seen Deshaun have a good football game since he's been a Cleveland Brown. But Deshaun Watson probably hasn't played a good football game, a football game that he's felt truly good about in a win since 2019, right? Maybe he got one in 2020, but it's been a long time, right, since he's felt great about a win and great about how he played. It's been a very long time. And when it's been that long of a time and you feel like it should be happening and it's not happening, it's frustrating, and you start to press and you start to overthink. You just need a good game, right? Like that's really what he needed, was just a good game. He needed that performance. I think that will help relax him, help him play the brand of football that we've seen him play before that got him to 3 Pro Bowls.
Yeah, and he mentions Will Fuller. You got 3 guys that could end up. I don't necessarily know if Cooper can be Will Fuller. Elijah Moore can be Will Fuller. Marquise Goodwin can be Will Fuller. Both of them can be better than Will Fuller. That's the reason you go and you get Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah, and it's going to take some time to get the chemistry right. It's going to take some time to get those opportunities synced up, right, to make sure that you can get a guy open. There were a couple of times where they had some opportunities to do that in Cincinnati. They couldn't do it because of the weather. It was really throwing the ball placement off. But there's going to be opportunities for that. Not going to be every game, but there's going to be opportunities. And there's also going to be opportunities for them 50-50 balls on the sideline. I think they did a good job adjusting this week, making sure that when they do run those routes, they have it be the bigger receivers in Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper, because you'll remember versus Pittsburgh, they were trying to do that to Elijah Moore, and Elijah Moore just wasn't long enough to get his feet in bounds on some of those.
All right, so this is from Game Day NFL, and they tweet out the QBs who have been sacked most so far this season. Sam Howell, number 1 at 19. Tannehill and Fields, 13 apiece. Watson, Jones, and Ritter tied for 4th with 12. We've talked about this before. There will be some sacks because of Deshaun Watson. When you extend plays, that's kind of the downside of it, and you live with it. You just want him to get rid of the ball when there isn't anything there. At some point in time, you give up on the thing and you live to play another down.
You live with it, but you don't want to be on that list, right? Like yeah. There's a level of living with it that you don't want to be on. And for Deshaun, like, you can't continue to be on this list. It's part of the reason he's going to throw at practice, right? Because he takes a ton of hits, and you just don't want to be on that list. You don't want to be anything to do with Daniel Jones, Desmond Ritter, Justin Fields, Ryan Tannehill, or Sam Howell right now. You should not be anywhere with those guys. So Deshaun's going to have to figure out what adjustments he has to make. And I think he's going to have the realization that, hey, he can't Houdini it all the time, right? Like, it's great when he can, but he can't Houdini it all the time like he could when he was 22. He's going to have to get rid of that ball quickly. He's going to have to learn how to avoid sacks using the art of pocket mechanics. It's not super fun, but it's something that he's going to have to learn how to do, or else his game's not going to age gracefully. And again, you don't see Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks sitting at that sack number, right? You don't see Pat Mahomes on that list. He improvises, he makes plays down the field. You don't see him on that list. You don't see Joe Burrow with a calf injury on that list. Then you don't see Justin Herbert or Josh Allen, any of those guys that we talk about being up here on that list. So again, if Deshaun wants to get to that place where he was and talked about like he was, he has to get a grip on this sack number. Like, it cannot continue to be this high, because right now he's on pace to do what he's done his whole career, which is be above 40 sacks. That's not an acceptable number for him.
All right, so the question becomes, how does Watson take that next step, and then how does the offense evolve minus Nick Chubb?
I mean, Watson takes that next step by, one, throwing with more anticipation. We've seen him do this in 2020. The anticipatory throws, you want to see him do that, and just taking what's there with the offense, right? I think sometimes he has the tendency to want to do it all on one play. And that's kind of what makes him an interesting player, is that he can sometimes do it all on one play, but that can't be how he plays quarterback anymore. He has to play a more calm, a more slowed down style of quarterback. And I have to imagine he doesn't agree to jump on and play in Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski citing him as one of the big reasons he wants to play here if that's not on his mind. So he has to make that adjustment in his game, right? You can either go do this one or two ways if you're him. You can adjust your game a lot like Pat Mahomes has adjusted his game and aged gracefully into that good night. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers is another guy who adjusted his game gracefully. Or you can Cam Newton this thing and force your way and play your style and never adapt, and your career will be over by 29, 28. And people will be talking about how fast your career went because you never adjusted your style of play. So that's the thing with Deshaun. He's got to make that adjustment, right? Aaron Rodgers at one point was known as a scramble guy, right? As a Houdini-ish figure. I know it sounds crazy to those of us who weren't around in 2007, but that's really what Aaron Rodgers' game was. And now you don't even think of him as somebody who breaks the pocket. Another guy who adjusted his game, kind of don't think about it that much, Big Ben, right? Completely different guy from 2007 than he was in 2018. So he's going to have to make those adjustments to figure out how he can make plays within the structure of the pocket without taking as many hits as he does. That doesn't mean there's not room to make plays out of structure. There's always room there, but the margin for him to say, hey, this play's dead, I need to go out of structure, needs to be much smaller than what it's been.
All right, before we go to break, one of the things the Browns did was they got the ball in Elijah Moore's hands, trying to get him some plays. Alex Van Pelt talked about getting the ball to Moore and what they're thinking.
We ask a lot out of Elijah because we know he can handle it. That's the thing. So as we keep growing with him, we'll keep finding ways to get the ball in his hands. You know, he's a very good runner after the catch, whether it's handing it to him in the backfield, throwing him a short route, bubbles, whatever that is. We're going to try to get him as many touches as we can throughout the course of a game. I mean, he is dynamic with the ball in his hand. He's going to make guys miss at times, and he's got the speed to run away. So, matter of time before he pops a big one.
And Quincy, that's kind of one of the ways you deal with the loss of Nick Chubb. There was a stat from Next Gen Stats. Elijah Moore had the biggest cushion of defenders. It was like 8 yards. And eventually, you're putting the defensive backs and the secondary in a spot where don't miss a tackle, because you miss a tackle, that 5-yard gain is a 25-yard gain or a 55-yard touchdown.
Yeah, you just want Elijah Moore to get his footprint on the game. You know that he's somebody who can make some big plays for this offense and somebody who can stretch the defense both vertically and horizontally, so you want to use them to crease them. And I think that, eventually it's going to pay off. They have to figure out what does work with Elijah Moore getting the ball, what does not work, right? That's going to be a trial and error process. We're seeing that trial and error process, right? Because there's a lot of plays where they go give Elijah Moore the ball. We're like, well, we don't need to run that one again. And there's a lot of plays where they do, and you're like, I think that one could work. So it's a trial and error process. They're doing it right now. And I think by the time we get to November again, they're going to be at a place where they feel like they got 5-6 plays that they really feel like they get Elijah involved with early if they get certain looks.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from somebody who knows Jim Schwartz defense, what it does well, what is coming. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Former NFL executive Michael Lombardi, he knows Jim Schwartz really well, has been with him in a couple of places. Here is what he has seen from Jim Schwartz's defense with the Browns.
When you study Schwartz's career, when he plays the wide nine, you've never been able to run the ball on him because he's really good at teaching run fits. Everybody, you hear this rhetoric, Bill. Oh, they're in a 9-man, they're in an 8-man front. Okay, that's great. But sometimes if you're not on the same level of the 8-man front, you're really not in an 8-man front. Your levels are distorted. Everything gets it's like a zone. If you're not playing it correctly, it gets messed up. So his run fits are really good. And you can't run bootlegs or naked on him because his ends are too wide. So you take away a whole element of some easy throws for a quarterback. And they run to the football. And then when they get into a passing situation, now he's taking Garrett and moving them all over the place. And he says, okay, who's your worst lineman? Okay, I got that. Here comes Garrett. Now you block him one-on-one.
Right.
The other misconception about football is it's like basketball. If you have a bad line and Tennessee doesn't have a good line, don't rush 3 and don't rush 4. Because somebody can double team somebody on 3. But if you have a shitty line, rush 5. Because that means somebody has to block one-on-one all the time. And that's what Schwartz did. And then it gets Garrett. I mean, he had him on Ted Karras. I love Ted Karras. We drafted him in New England. Great kid, tough guy. But one-on-one with Myles Garrett and, driving to the lane, that's going to be 2 points every time. And that's what he did.
And again, Quincy, when you look at it that way, you're seeing the recipe for Jim Schwartz defensive matchups, it's staying pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's real easy, too, because he has Myles Garrett. And he has all these pieces to play with and all these pieces to move around. And it's easy to win a chess game, Dave, when you got nothing but queens and kings out there, right? Like, it's real easy, and that's what he's working with.
Yeah.
He's working with a board full of queens protecting one king, and that's where you want to be at. He has a lot of guys who could be in a lot of different places, who can make tackles a lot of different parts of the field, who are very athletic and very fast, and then he has the queen of queens in Myles Garrett, because Myles can do it all dominantly, and scare the living daylights out of offensive coordinators, offensive linemen, and offensive line coaches.
The other thing that we've seen early, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah looks awfully good. What have you thought? And what's the difference? What do you think's changed?
Well, he has better play up front, right? Defensive tackle play is much better, allows him to run around. And I talked about this in the offseason. When you have somebody whose strong suit is their instincts, but you put them in a defense where everybody's kind of freestyling, you're not going to see the benefit of that player's instincts, because good instincts are reliant on everybody else being where they're supposed to be, right? You have a guy like JOK, you need to put an Anthony Walker next to him, because you need to trust that whoever is that Mike linebacker is going to be where they need to be, so JOK can make these assumptions with reasonable guesses. How many times did you see JOK and Grant Delpit and John Johnson all collide at one hole last year, right? Like, because they're all trying to freestyle and do the right play. Now, he's able to shoot the gap, make a play, or he's able to hold a gap, make a play, because everybody's where they're supposed to be. That's just, you need structure in order to use your instincts, and I think he's a great example of that. And now that there's structure, you're going to see him shine, especially since the defensive line's really good, and it allows him to be an afterthought to these offensive linemen, and you're seeing the benefit right now.
The other guy that has really flashed in the first 3 games has been Denzel Ward. This is from Ryan Clark, a guy that played cornerback for the Steelers. Hard to find a corner playing better ball than Denzel Ward right now. Down and tackling like a lockdown and tackling like a linebacker. And here's some numbers that back that up. Forced incompletion leaders through 3 weeks from Pro Football Focus. Alante Taylor, number 1 with the Saints, is 6. Marshawn Lattimore played his high school football at Glenville, and Denzel Ward, 5 apiece, along with Yayadam. So, 3 of them are Saints. But Denzel Ward is playing that well and has that many forced incompletions.
Imagine having 3 guys on that list blowing a 17-point lead. I wonder who's the coordinator there. But yeah, Denzel Ward, he's been playing excellent football. I think his run stopping, his playmaking as a tackler has been spectacular, and his recovery, right? Even if he gets beaten, man, the reason you don't really worry about it is because he's so quick, he can recover and make the pass break up. So yeah, Denzel Ward, I mean, we worried about the consistency with him in the offseason. Well, 3 games this year, he's been as consistent and as excellent as we hoped Denzel Ward could be. He looks like he's finally living up to the potential of that contract, and it couldn't have come at a better time.
All right, before we go to break, Kimberly Martin, Dan Orlovsky from ESPN's Get Up on the keys to the Browns-Ravens game Sunday.
I actually spoke to Deshaun Watson last week after the game, and he talked about the criticisms of his play. And he said, you know what, he can't listen to the outside noise. I just have to be better. We will not make excuses. But imagine if this offense matches the play of the defense. He told me there is no ceiling for how great we could be. But also, look at the Ravens, though. They have a lot of key injuries. Yesterday, 7 guys did not practice, including Odell, Kyle Hamilton, Marcus. Like, they have a lot of guys that have not practiced. And I'm curious who shows up on Sunday.
This game's about Lamar Jackson in the past game. If the Ravens think that they are going to line up on first down against Cleveland's defense and run the football, they're going to get blown out. This defensive line in Cleveland is fire off the football better than anybody in the game. This game's got to be about Zay Flowers. It's got to be about OBJ. He's got to play. Bateman, they're going to see man coverage, and it's going to be the conversation, this pass game, how they get the ball down the field, this trifecta of wide receivers. It's time to show up. You're not going to beat them running the football if you're Baltimore.
And Quincy, I kind of like the matchups with with Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome, who's back. I'm okay with matching up. Their wide receiving core and receivers, I'm not afraid of them if I'm the Browns.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. Like, again, Zay Flowers creates some unique problems because of his quickness. He's real dynamite in that way. But they should be able to get a hold on him. They should be one of the few teams athletic enough to get there. And then Lamar Jackson obviously creates some unique issues. Mark Andrews creates some problems, but he just hasn't been super effective this year. And the Browns do have some good solutions to throw at him. So they match up well against this Ravens offense. Now, again, I don't know much about what this Ravens offense truly is because we're really going off of 2 games here for the Ravens offense. So it's a new offense and everything else. I don't know what they're supposed to look like, but what I do know is that they're not as complicated when it comes to the run game. And when it comes to this passing game, they are a little bit more complex, but I still don't think the personnel in there is anything super exceptional.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns Coverage, and I'm going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear a recipe for the Browns to win consistently. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns Coverage. Michael Lombardi on the Bill Simmons podcast, talking about what the Browns defense allows them to do in order to win games.
Now you have the ball 1st and 10 at your own 8. Against that defense, it's hard to go 12 plays down the field and score. It's hard. You're going to screw it up somewhere along the way. And if you do it once, God bless. Can you do it 3 times for 21 points? No chance. You're not doing it 3. I don't care how good you are. And that's the way the Browns have to play. Play field position, make them go in a long way. They're not throwing the ball over our head. They don't have enough time. And you can win a lot of games. It's a lot like, you know, the difference between professional tennis and amateur tennis. The amateur hits the ball into the net. The pro hits shots that the other guy can't return. That's the way you have to play. Like, you're not playing conservative. You're playing a professional game. You're just letting them screw it up. And that's what I think the Browns should do. And they can do enough with Watson throwing the ball. They have Moore as a weapon. They've got Cooper and Njoku. The tight end is a good player. I mean, and this offensive line is good too now. They're not bad in the offensive line. I know they lost Conklin, but Jones stepped in and played well for him. So, yeah, to me, I thought they could win the North this summer. And even though without Chubb, I think if they could make a trade for another runner, I would do that.
Middle bomb there at the end, Quincy, would make a trade for another runner, which I get it.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen because there's really nobody there that's gonna, like, if you're trying to replace Nick Chubb, you're just not gonna do it with one guy, right? You're better off just switching the focus of your offense and changing just some of your basic philosophy around than trying to find another Nick Chubb, because you gonna get Jonathan Taylor. I got news for you. He's not Nick Chubb, right? Like, he's not the same reliable type dude that Nick Chubb was. So you can't get that back. It'd be like trying to trade for somebody to replace Ray Lewis. At that point, you might as well just try to figure out a different solution. So yeah, I don't think you can fix the Browns' run game by just trading for somebody, because Nick Chubb's not going to be available for trade. He can't play this year, and that's the only guy who could help you out when it comes to this run offense. But yeah, when you look at how the Browns need to play, they can play this low margin of error style, but I also think that doesn't suit Deshaun well. Like, you need Deshaun to feel comfortable doing what he likes to do, getting those downfield shots. And honestly, you want to do that because the earlier you can go up on teams, the more you can suffocate them, right? If you can get up early on teams, then you're going to aid this defense's ability to shut down offenses, because now they got to hold the ball, right? We talk about true pass sets. That's one of the things that Myles Garrett hasn't had a ton of each year in Cleveland, because he's always playing these close games, or these games where the Browns are behind. So he doesn't get as many opportunities to get sacks. That's why people think he's better than a lot of these guys who have more sacks, because he doesn't get the same amount of true pass opportunities. Now, if you get ahead, you're going to get a lot of those opportunities. You're going to see those sack numbers for his defensive line balloon up. You're going to see these sack numbers for Myles Garrett balloon up. And think about what happened in Philadelphia. It wasn't just that defense was dominant last year. It was that defense was dominant, and that offense was getting big plays consistently, getting up early in games. And when you can do that, you can really suffocate an offense even more than before.
So Jim Schwartz, Browns defensive coordinator, met with the media again today. He was asked why Lamar Jackson is so difficult to bring down.
Because he's one of the best athletes in the NFL, and just happens to play the quarterback position. So, if we saw running backs doing that, we wouldn't bat an eye. We got to tackle him like he's a running back, tackle him like he's a wide receiver. Just because the ball's in his hand doesn't mean that he's still not a threat to run. So, I think that probably has a lot to do with it. And, we're going to try to be physical. If he does run, we're going to try to play our game and, put some hits on him and, those kind of things. But, you got to tackle him like he's a running back. And, if you half step, if you play too cautious, or, a guy like that, if he pumps you off your feet, we're not playing good defense if you see guys leave their feet on the quarterback, right? Because he's just going to pull it and he's going to fly past and he's going to make a big play. So we got to stay on our feet. We got to tackle through his midsection, and we got to get him on the ground like he's a running back.
And Quincy, I'm sure we just heard what has been repeated numerous times in the defensive meeting rooms.
Yeah, wrap him up, right? Don't let him go. Wrap him up. Don't assume you got him. Don't think you got him. Don't start celebrating until you see his butt on the ground and the whistle get blown. Because Lamar Jackson is very slippery, and he's somebody who can make you look silly. So that's definitely been a point of emphasis in that room. No missed tackles, no missed opportunities, especially because you look at some of the missed opportunities they had against Pittsburgh, where they thought they had Najee, and they didn't get him, right? Like, you got to make sure you finish these plays. You got to make sure you finish these tackles, especially on Lamar Jackson.
All right, when you look at it, key matchups for Browns-Ravens, what do the Browns need to do to get a win?
I think it's going to matter how they match up with Lamar Jackson, how much pressure they can get on him. Can the defensive line remain as dominant as they've been against an offensive line that looks to be the best one that they've played so far, or at least the most complete one that they played? Because Cincinnati's offensive line isn't terrible. That's going to be a huge factor. I think also when you look at the offensive side, can they take advantage of the middle of the field? You know that the Baltimore Ravens are going to send a lot of blitzes. They're going to send their linebackers on blitzes. Can you get David Njoku involved? Can you get Elijah Moore involved? And then eventually, can you get Amari Cooper involved? Can you get this passing offense going? If Deshaun has 300 yards in this game or something like that, there's no way that I think that they lose this game. But that's what it's going to take. You're going to need a solid performance from your quarterback. You're going to need him to stand in the pocket and deal. Basically, that's what you're going to need from him. We don't need the Houdini stuff. We don't need him to run a lot. We just need him to stand in the pocket and deal.
And don't turn the ball over. Let's add, don't turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before I let you go, 3-1. You know, if they find a way to win at home against the Ravens, which they should, they're 3-1 heading into the break. Heading into the bye week. I think anybody would have signed up for that. With the first 3 games, you'd be 2-1 in the division.
Yeah, 2-1 in the division, 3-1 so far, undefeated at home. How could you not want that, right? So look, we all kind of expect. It's funny that the Pittsburgh loss shook us like this. But we all kind of expected that if we were going to lose a game in this first 4, we knew it was going to be that at Pittsburgh game, because that's the game it's weird stuff happens in that game all the time. Like, you don't even want to play it anymore. It's like scheduling App State. Like, it's just like, let me just not do this anymore, because like nothing good ever happens. But yeah, you knew that something weird could go down in that game because it's just in Pittsburgh, something's there. But if you get out of the stretch 3-1, you put yourself in a good position. You also have 3 wins over conference opponents, which is very important, right? You talk about the tiebreakers. If you don't win a division, that's an important tiebreaker right there. So yes, you would be very excited for a 3-1 record going into the bye. And you'd be very excited because if you are 3-1, you probably got something good from your quarterback and your defense going into that bye week. So you feel great about that too.
Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff with his Browns coverage, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave Frank from Cleveland. Mari Cooper. I mean, that seems to be Deshaun's favorite target right now, and they're talking about letting him go after this year because of his salary. Can't they rework his contract, give him a bunch of money up front, and kick it down the road like they do everyone else? Number two, I like to see Cedric Tillman get in there. He showed in the preseason, he's very capable. Number three, Pierre Strong. I like to see him get the bulk of the carries one game. He runs hard and he's fast. And last but not least, I don't want everyone getting overexcited over that one game, but like me and you said, give him till like 7-8 games. If he continues then we can be ecstatic. But great show as always, Dave. I love you, brother. It's a jungle out there, and you know it and I know it. Be safe, brother.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik, reporter for cleveland.com, as well as Plain Dealer. Tim, Cooper, I wouldn't be surprised if they figure out a way to work out his contract coming up. That's something that they can do down the road. And as far as Tillman and Strong, those are guys that they're kind of trying to figure out how they fit in. There's a role for them. They're just trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And starting with Amari Cooper, it's not like he's an older receiver who relies on blazing speed. He's a guy who's fast, but he also wins with some route running savvy. He knows how to get open, and he's got very good hands. So I think that those are skills that should age well, even if he slows down just a little bit. I mean, again, he's going to be 30 pretty soon. I think by next season he'll be 30. So the Browns will have to be wary of that, and we'll have to continue to draft and develop receivers to potentially succeed Amari Cooper, but I don't think that time is now. And as far as Cedric Tillman and Pierre Strong go, I look at those guys as obviously young players still learning the system. I mean, Cedric Tillman's a rookie. Pierre Strong just got traded to the team prior to the start of the season, and we've seen them get some reps in games. Tillman's been in all 3 games, hadn't gotten a target yet. You would have to imagine as time goes on, as he continues to get a handful of snaps, maybe he'll see a target or 2 thrown his way. And it's a thing where it seems like the Browns want to, build him in slowly, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the right way, I think, to do things. If you have young players, you shouldn't have to force them into the action right away if they're not ready for it. Let them develop, let them work on it in practice, and once you feel like they're ready, that's when you get them out there, and you don't give them too much that they can't handle. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with Tillman and Strong. Yeah, I would agree. The other thing, you wrote an article about Deshaun Watson, and kind of when do we say he's back? Is there how do you measure? Is he back to what he was? Well, I think we need to see more than one really good game. Now, we do have to couch, you can make arguments both for and against, whether what he did against the Titans was valid. I mean, 289 yards and 2 touchdowns against any NFL defense is pretty good. The Titans do have a bad secondary. They were not very good, and Deshaun Watson, took advantage of it. But the other way you could spin that is that's easily the most complete game he's had since he's become a Cleveland Brown. We've seen glimpses of Houston Deshaun Watson, the most significant, of course, being that second half he had against the Commanders when he looked outstanding and helped the Browns get that win in D.C. So that's really the best we've seen out of Watson until now. I think with what's coming up on the schedule, that's really going to tell us what I think we need to know about whether Deshaun Watson's back. And I even look at the numbers. The Ravens coming up on Sunday, that's a defense that while they may not have superstars, Marlon Humphrey still didn't practice again this week. We don't know if he's going to play, with his foot issue. Baltimore coming into this week, second in the NFL in pass yards allowed per attempt at 4.3. Then out of the bye, you've got the Niners defense. You don't need me to tell you just how many studs that Niners defense has. 5th in the NFL in quarterback ranking against it, 66.6. So these are 2 very good defenses. Watson goes in these next 2 games and plays like he did against Tennessee and, puts up similar numbers. Then, yeah, I think we can kind of start to have that conversation. But for me, it comes down to just consistency. Can he carry it over from one game to the next Because, any quarterback can have a big game. It's the great ones that can string them together. All right, so Browns-Ravens matchup. Harry Douglas will be part of the ESPN radio crew. He talked about this matchup on ESPN's Get Up.
I'm looking at this Ravens offense. They better be ready for the blitz, because one thing Jim Schwartz told us against the Cincinnati Bengals, who have the personnel, is that we don't care about who you have over there. We believe in our guys, and they have the personnel from the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary to play man coverage. So how's Lamar Jackson in this offense going to do against the blitz? Because you know it's coming.
Wait, and they've struggled with that. Lamar has, since Lamar's been a Raven, they've struggled with pressure. They very rarely had a plan. And kind of Harry mentions the secondary. Denzel Ward, I don't know if there's a corner in football playing better than Denzel Ward right now, and that's a huge deal. Who's the matchup that they like if you're Baltimore offensive?
Tim, if defensively with the Browns, none of their, and again, I think Zay Flowers is a really good player. I think Mark Andrews is a really good player. The way the guys are covering, I take my chances with the Browns defense, and Jim Schwartz said they're going to get after it.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude you got to have against this Ravens team. I mean, it's a physical football team, and, you know, we've talked before about, you know, how well the Browns match up with the Bengals, and I think their defense also matches up well with Baltimore in the sense that they have this defensive front, and they have a lot of guys like particularly Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah who can maybe not completely mirror Lamar Jackson as far as speed goes, but get close to it. And as long as you have guys that are close to it, you have guys that are able to deal with the mobile quarterbacks and be able to kind of limit them, that's where I think you can have a little bit of an advantage. And, you know, with Baltimore, we still have to see, you know, if Lamar Jackson can win a game, you know, be really successful in this offense when they're one-dimensional. You know, they've had a lot of banged-up running backs. Gus Edwards and Justice Hill have been getting back into practice, so that's outstanding news for the Ravens because they were down to Kenyon Drake and Melvin Gordon last week, and having those guys, you know, there's not as good as Gus Edwards and Justice Hill are. So no question, Baltimore wants to run the football. This is the new offensive system that Todd Monken has brought into Baltimore. We'll see what kind of impact it has. It'll certainly be better, I think, towards the end of the season than the beginning of the season. But I think the plan, you know, certainly is, you know, try and force Baltimore to be as one-dimensional as possible and then live with the results. And, of course, when you have the secondary that the Browns have, as well as they've been playing, with how well the pass rush is playing, the defensive front's been playing, those are things you take your chances with. And no reason for the Browns to change their identity after how successful it's been 3 games in the season. I mean, they've given up 1 offensive touchdown in 12 quarters, and they've maybe allowed, I think, 2 entire plays in the red zone all season.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we dive a little deeper into the matchup. Browns-Ravens coming up Sunday at 1. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Some debate going on who has the best defense in the NFL. Here's the ESPN crew talking about that.
You're telling me the best defense in football right now is Cleveland.
And the numbers don't lie.
Yes.
They're first in just about every category across the board.
This defense absolutely deserves to be in the conversation with Dallas and San Francisco, 100%. Do I think that San Francisco's defense is better? I do, as of right now. But the addition of Zadarius Smith, when they put him and Myles Garrett on the same side of the defensive line together, and it's an obvious pass situation, punt.
Who do we believe in this division? Cincinnati, rough start. Obviously, Burrow guts it out the other night.
I still believe in Cincinnati.
That's the team you believe in, long term.
I'm telling everybody, do not sleep on them. Joe Burrow hopefully stays healthy. It's the best offensive line he's ever had. Finally got the ball to Jamar. And I think their defense is young and athletic in a way that they haven't necessarily had.
I'm going to go Ravens if they can stay healthy. That's the thing.
You just told us you thought they were the best defense in ball.
So I'll agree with Harry. Ravens were my preseason Super Bowl winner. But the thing I believe most in is this Cleveland Browns defense.
All right.
She said Cleveland Browns defense at the end of that. So, Tim, I know you've written an article, Fact or Fiction. Do the Browns have the NFL's best defense? Take us through that.
Well, I said that, right now, as good as they're playing right now, I say fiction just because of, we really haven't seen them prove it against elite competition. What we've seen has been obviously very good, but we also have to couch it by saying, the Bengals had a banged up Joe Burrow who didn't practice in all of training camp. And clearly, neither offense was going to throw well in the rain that we kept seeing, along the lake in game one. And then on Sunday, with the Titans, Derrick Henry could do nothing. Brian Tannehill did not look good at all. And basically, by process of elimination, you're saying the best offense they've seen is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh only put up about 255 yards of offense, and I think 71 of those came on that one play from Kenny Pickett to George Pickens. And that's really the only play this defense has given up this entire season. So, I mean, on one hand, you could say, yeah, this defense has been incredibly dominant, and they've held two teams completely out of the end zone in 3 games. And that's obviously true. You can't deny just the numbers they are. Number 1 in scoring defense, number 1 fewest passing yards allowed, number 2 against the run. All these stats that tell you just how good this defense is. Just got to see it against really good teams. Obviously, I talked about, the tests Deshaun Watson is going to face with Baltimore and San Francisco. That's what this defense is going to be tested with. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, easily the best quarterback they've seen all season. September, Lamar Jackson, I've written about before just how great he is. Not quite the same player in October, but I don't know what kind of difference there is between October 1st and September 30th. Probably not a lot. And then, of course, the 49ers. They're probably the most talented team in the NFL. All those weapons on offense, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, that offensive line. Brock Purdy, I think, is very underrated. This defense is very good, but I think we need to see how they do against these two teams before I'm ready to crown them as number 1 in the NFL.
All right, fair enough. Jim Schwartz was asked today, what do they need to do to continue to play this type of defense?
We just got to take it on a week-by-week basis, and, we got to put our eyes on the next opponent and not what we've done in the past and not what we're going to do a month from now or, 2 months from now. Let's live in the moment. Let's practice hard. Let's meet well. Let's prepare well. And let's go out and perform well on a Sunday and just keep doing that. And, we can keep stacking those. Don't worry about what's happened in the past. Don't worry about what's happened in the future. I think that you can get derailed a little bit in this league sometimes with success. Sometimes success is harder to deal with than failure.
And again, when you hear Jim Schwartz talk, you're kind of like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's been around the block so many times. He knows, he's seen so much in the NFL that, the true measure, I think, of success in the NFL in the regular season is consistency. How good are you one game to the next, into the next, into the next, and on and on and on, and making sure you're not getting too high or too low. It's just about, staying consistent. And that's what we've seen out of the elite units is they're great usually week in to week out. Occasionally you'll have a trip up, but that happens. That's going to happen in the NFL. And the longer the Browns can go without having one of those defensive trip up games, that's, I think, it'd tell so much. But it's clear just the kind of impact Jim Schwartz has had on this defense, the attacking mindset that seems like it's fit this personnel so well. The personnel they've added in, Zadarius Smith, Obo Okoronkwo, Juan Thornhill, those guys are producing. And again, I mentioned, just the way they've dominated offensive fronts all season long against all 3 teams they've played so far. Certainly they have the ability to continue that. Great defenses are at their best when they're when their defensive front is dominating the line of scrimmage, resetting it, making teams one-dimensional. And for the Browns, not only do they have that, they can cover as well. I mean, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, they've played well so far to start the season. And again, just comes down to consistency, and how you play when teams have seen more of what you're going to do and have more ideas of what they're going to do to try and attack it.
All right, before I let you go, some key matchups. When you look at this, what do the Browns need to be aware of? What do they need to do to get a win that would put them at 3-1 heading into the bye?
Well, I think obviously, Deshaun Watson needs to continue to play well. And like I said, it comes down to, can he do the same things he did against Tennessee? Not try to force the ball. Don't be afraid to take singles and doubles. The old axiom of you don't go broke taking a profit. Don't be afraid to just be patient on offense and to continue to trust in the run game, trust in Jerome Ford. I know he didn't get a lot of carries last week. Kareem Hunt, they're working him in. Keep working with those guys. Keep getting them involved in the run game. We know Jerome Ford's got home run speed. He's shown it, and he's shown also the ability as well as a receiver out of the backfield. He had that great double move on Azeez Al-Shaair of the Titans for that touchdown in that game last week that really got them going. So I think that is going to be something I'm watching is, how can Watson sustain what he did a week ago. On the other side of the football, it looks like, when the Browns defense is on the field, it looks like Baltimore is certainly getting healthy. Looking at the injury report, like I said, Justice Hill getting back into practice, Gus Edwards, who had the concussion protocol from the loss to the Colts, full participant the last 2 days. So that's where I think that's going to be interesting, because it looks like Lamar Jackson will have some weapons in the run game back. And the more weapons he has in the run game, the fewer hits he has to take. And I even wrote about it as well in my Fact or Fiction on Sunday, is how much, are the Ravens going to put on him? It might eventually be too much, but the fact that those two guys look like they're on the right track to come back, it's great for Baltimore. And for Cleveland, it's going to be a test of the run game. Baltimore is usually good up front, and Cleveland and the Browns just got to try and find a way to match that. And when Lamar Jackson, has the ball in his hands, you gotta find a way to keep him one-dimensional. It's easier said than done, because he's as great a dual threat as we've seen in the NFL in a long time. But if you could find a way to make him one-dimensional and make him have to go on long drives, not let Mark Andrews beat you for big plays, keep Zay Flowers from taking the top out the defense, certainly you have a chance to control Lamar Jackson. If you do that, if you're the Browns, you got a good shot to go to 3-1 before the bye.
Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Really insightful stuff for the Browns with the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.